from Laurie Simmons. Laurie attended Linden State College in Lyndonville, Vermont. She majored in television production and communications. She served in the United States Air Force in Hawaii and California as an emergency actions controller. But most importantly, she has been a stay-at-home mom for 13 years to two amazing kids, one who was diagnosed with autism at 22 months and has been using an AAC device since age 3. Laurie has spent the last 7 years learning the AAC device right alongside her daughter. Laurie also has used Reading Aloud as a large part of this learning process with her daughter as well. So we are really excited to hear her story, to hear her share with us all of her knowledge and her experiences in working with Amber and learning that AAC device right alongside her. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Laurie.
Hello, everyone. Let me see. Hi, I'm Laurie Simmons, and this is my youngest daughter, Amber. I just wanted to say that I do not have a recipe that as to how to teach a child to communicate or how to learn a speech device, but I'm happy to share with you our story. I hope it helps you on your journey. Before we begin, the most important thing about learning lamp words for life and all things is believe. Believe in your child and believe in yourself. Presumed competency means you start with the belief that your child can understand and can learn. That doesn't mean you assume brilliance or assume knowledge. You'll need to learn the speech device, and so will your child. Give yourself time and grace to do so. We are in this together. Our story begins 2 weeks after my oldest daughter, Jordan, was born. My mom came to visit from Vermont, and she and my mother-in-law were talking. My mother-in-law asked a very poignant question to my mom. What do you think is the most important thing you did in raising your children? And my mom said, read to them. I'm sure there was much more to that conversation, but that was the piece that stuck with me. I remember my mom reading to me, and some of those stories remain with me as part of my childhood, but I never really gained a love of reading. At the time, I had just turned 30 years old, and I was just beginning to enjoy books and audiobooks for pleasure. I really didn't know much about literature in general or anything in children's literature. If the most important thing is to read to my child, how do I do that? That's when I did a library search on the keywords read aloud. The book I found in my search was the Read Aloud Handbook by Jim Trelease. It's a wonderful book that explains why it's so important to read aloud. This truly is a book that should be given to at every baby shower, to parents expecting their first child, or any family with children. The first half of the book gives all the benefits to reading aloud, and the second lists a treasury of wonderful titles. Within the first chapter, a question is asked, what about reading aloud to children with special needs? Jim Trelease highlights 2 special needs families whose children had amazing outcomes due to their diet of read alouds. I am incredibly grateful to have read this book early in my parenting journey, for I didn't know what needs we would have in the future. So Jay and I began reading to infant Jordan as she sat in her baby bouncer seat, and we took turns reading her the first 5 books of the Harry Potter series that we got for Christmas from my sister. This was an excellent warm-up because I struggled in school and reading was not my strength. But for me, reading was one thing and reading aloud was another. Once Jordan became mobile, I got frustrated with her lack of attention to the books that I had on hand. She could watch a Baby Einstein video, but sitting for a story wasn't possible. I was currently attending MOPS, MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers, which is a group at our church. And I asked one of the other toddler moms, how do I get her to listen to a story? I really didn't know if anyone else was having this difficulty. She advised me that I should try reading the first word books to my daughter, and she gave me a few to try. Well, that worked because Jordan said her first word at 9 or 10 months, and she was reading the first word picture book back to me on her first birthday. Jordan loved songs and stories, and she transitioned to more complex storylines without too much trouble. I actually used books to slow my fast-moving toddler down. Nearly 3 years after Jordan was born, Amber arrived. She was not acquiring skills like Jordan, but Jordan must have been advanced. We thought Amber would catch up. Amber had a really tough time learning to walk, and it was her physical delay that led to her autism diagnosis. She was diagnosed with autism at 22 months. Filling the silence. Upon learning her diagnosis, we decided to do two things so that Amber would not become distant to us. First, Amber seemed to party in her crib, laughing at night, and she was sleeping during the day. We didn't know just how much time she was awake at night, safe in her crib. So I decided if she was going to be awake, so was I. The second thing was I took advantage of her physical delay, and I held her a lot. At night when we should have been sleeping, I held her while we listened to music. I also held her throughout the day to read to her as much as possible. Beginning to read to Amber looked a little different, but I also began with the first word books. She was a first page to the last page kind of reader. I sat with her on my lap facing me, and I rested the book on my chest. She didn't want me to interrupt her page turning. The first thing I did was when she turned a page, I would quickly touch one picture, identify it, and make the corresponding sound to which that object made. And then I let her turn the page. Yes, we started reading with a lot of tug of war of pages. However, it wasn't long before she was grabbing my hand and having me identify more pictures on the page. At each time my finger landed on a picture, she intently watched my mouth. It was like she was willing her own mouth to make the imitation. Now, this video is a little bit old, so the sound may not be very good, but take a look at Amber here.
Oh, help? Okay. What do you want? Show me. Touch. So if I turn to look at Daddy, oh, yes, Amber. You touch. Blackberries, yum, yum, yum. White sheep, bah. White truck. Dog. Zebra. Zebra. Tomato. Oh,
Take a look at Amber's mouth as I read to her in this next video, but try not to be distracted by Jordan, who is trying to get our attention.
fish. Red fire truck. Wee-oo, wee-oo, wee-oo. Yellow car. Moo. Cow.
Let's play Simon Says.
Tractor or duck?
Once after doing many hours of this, Amber's sleep-deprived mama forgot to give the sound for a picture for the second time. And Amber said in a ticked-off toddler voice, car, vroom, vroom. I was exhausted, but I was elated. I couldn't wait to hear more. I couldn't wait for her to hand me one of these books and tell me things. However, it just didn't come that easy. That was the first and probably the last time that toddler Amber verbally responded to my reading. Amber began PT, OT, and speech therapy somewhere between 18 months and 20 months old. And during her first speech sessions, she was learning PECs. We understood that Amber could learn to communicate with pictures, and they were her voice. We also knew that we needed to learn to teach Amber to take her words with her everywhere. So we got a small PECs book, and we did bring it with us everywhere. There's nothing like the sound of Velcro to let you know your child is communicating.
Good job. What do you want? What do you want? I want chip. I want chip. Good asking. Good job.
Amber's PECs book only contained pictures that we taught her. The first PEC she learned was car, which was generally used to ask to leave. One evening, when we were going out on a date, we explained to our babysitter and cousin how the PECs book worked. We showed her the PECs in Amber's book and the book of words we wanted to teach her. The following day, we went to the grocery store as a family, and an amazing thing happened. Once we were inside the store, we put Amber in the cart. She gave us the car PEC. We explained to her that we couldn't go to the car and that we needed to stay in the store and buy food. And then she gave us this PEC. We had not taught her this picture, and we were shocked that she gave it to us. Did she just tell us she was tired? Well, my husband Jay picked up Amber and he laid her on his shoulder, and she slept there like that for the rest of the shopping trip. She just used a PEC that we did not teach. We asked the babysitter if she had taught Amber any pictures, but she said she and Jordan had looked at the other pictures and it must have just gotten put in the wrong book by mistake. Well, what other things was Amber trying to tell us that she couldn't because she didn't have the picture? So at this point, we loaded the book with over 100 pictures of things she used and knew and things we wanted to hear from her. I also made a second book just in case we lost the first, though we never did. She also liked reading from a Leapfrog reader. This old technology was great for giving Amber some independence, and it was a precursor to using an iPad. Amber also loved music, and we sang to her often. And here's a video of her singing.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
Amber got her first speech device when she was 3 years old. She continued to carry her PECs book, and the adult aide working with her carried her talker because Amber's Vantage Light was just too heavy for her to carry. Okay, awesome. We just got the magic device. that would teach my child to talk. No, it just wasn't that easy. The first thing about getting a speech device is that it feels overwhelming to learn. It's technology that is organized language that you and I put no thought in producing. Really, no one instinctively thinks of word categories or parts of speech to say a word. You just say it. But now, in order to have a robust vocabulary of 3,000 plus words available, it must be organized. I wanted Amber to be able to tell me anything, and from our time reading the first word books, she already loved words. So something simple but remarkable happened. Andrea Hayes, Amber's second speech therapist, the one who helped us get the device, sat me down when it arrived and told me she wanted me to program something into the talker. My homework that week at speech was to import a picture, program a few buttons, and show Amber how to use what I made. I was doubtful. But she told me that she believed in me. She told me that she had every confidence that I could do it. I had the book on how to program the Vantage Light, and she wanted me to have fun with it. And I created this. This is a picture of me and Jordan and Amber, and there's a dog on the couch. And I programmed little spots of things that I thought Amber might want to say to us. Things like, I like mom's hair. I just want to stop and explain how monumental this moment was for me. My buy-in to the speech device hinged on the fact that the speech therapist believed that I could learn the device. I was doubtful, but as it turned out, I did a lot of programming to the Vantage Light in the year or two that we used it as our primary device. I moved icons, and I made loads of mistakes. But now I was on board with this device because I could personalize this tool to teach my daughter. This device was now a part of our lives.
With I play. I want. Oh, I eat. Want. I want. Play. Hair. You want to play hair? Okay. You can play with mommy's hair.
I want to show you this next video, even though I know now that it was a mistake to program a menu of songs. Now when Amber requests a song, she selects each word in the song's title.
With I. Oh. Should we sing something else? What should we sing? I'm a little teapot. Ready? I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here is my handle. Here is my spout. When I get all steamed up, I will shout. Just tip me over and pour me out. You like that one? Row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is fun and dream.
Amber needed to learn the words in her device and how and when to use them. The how and when is important. We understood that she couldn't just learn words that only applied to the weekly speech therapy session. There was a lot of living taking place outside that 1 hour a week with a specialist. The first way we began was with food.
Oh.
From the beginning, Amber's speech device has sat to the right of her at the table. This is my side of the table, and I can model to her what we're having to eat. I still do this 7 years later because she's a pretty compliant kid. Too compliant most of the time, because I need her to make a choice. I want her to make decisions. I want her to say no chili or whatever concoction I've created, but unless I model the refusal on the device, she'll only push it away. The next way Amber was learning the speech device was with crazy Mad Libs. While Amber was learning her speech device, she was also potty training. And Amber liked to play with her words a lot. The words she chose on the speech device did not necessarily go together, so I built them into Wild Mad Lib. And she would give me wonderful belly laughs about our crazy stories that we made together. But all along, she was learning the word locations. She was truly listening and learning the words. During this time, Amber was a very busy kid. The moment we were awakened to the possibility that Amber had autism, she had many therapies and worked with many people. We were operating on the notion that we only had a window of development to make lasting changes to her overall outcome. I believe in early intervention, but I no longer believe that there is a cap on our learning, not on my child and not on my own. However, at this time in our lives, I began to wonder what Amber was understanding, because she could not tell me. She understood the difference between 3D and 2D objects. She knew all of her letters and numbers and many things. But did she understand that a cow eats grass in a field and how milk comes from cows? The thing is, it's awful not to be able to ask why. Imagine your 2 or 3-year-old self not being able to ask questions. I wanted to provide her with answers to questions she wasn't asking and couldn't ask. However, it's not always easy to keep up a one-sided conversation. And because of this, I needed to read Amber more complex books. We were still reading any book we could get our hands on, but we weren't really taking away a story. I knew that Jordan got her ideas for questions from books that we were reading all throughout her development, and I knew that Amber was getting a raw deal. So I read the Read Aloud handbook again. Pairing the difficult things with the fun things. Before Amber was born, I taught a Wednesday night kids program for the preschoolers at our church. I taught a class of 1 year older than Jordan, so I could take a peek on what Jordan was going to learn and what skills she needed to develop. I was given a Sunday school curriculum and I followed it for my class. However, getting a group of 10 to 15 3-year-olds to listen to even a brief story required some motivation. So when it came to delivering the main story message, I bribed them with food. And it worked. The class was terrific about playing, singing, and making crafts. But when it came to listening to a story collectively, they could not listen well. I'm sure I didn't have to do this every time, but once I bribed them with a single gummy worm each. And they waited like little birds until after the story was over from that time forward. Reading a complex storyline with Amber was a challenge. We'd begin with reading on the couch, but within minutes, and sometimes seconds, she was racing to another room or floor of the house. I'd follow her up the stairs and into each room, but I doubted I was conveying my message. The next time I tried the bribe method, I made a bag of popcorn and I sat Amber on the couch with the bowl between her legs. I sat on the floor reading her a picture book story, and she stayed there for the entire book. It was a great beginning to a good story and a good strategy, but I didn't want to feed her each time I wanted her to hear a story. So here's the point that I want to make. Pair the difficult things with the fun things. I loved reading to Amber, and she loved it too. But she had a really difficult time keeping her body still for a story. She could read endlessly with me when she was touching the page, but listening to something longer required a different type of attention. During this time, my children hated baths. Basically, since they were born, they hated bath time, and it was a struggle. I thought I must be the worst bath giver on the planet. We tried giving baths frequently enough for them to become a habit, but it was still difficult every time. I'm still kind of amazed that this worked, but I brought the speech device and a book into the bathroom for bath time. I got Amber engaged with a cup with holes in it, and then I used the speech device to say the title of a book. The first book I tried was Make Way for Ducklings by Robert McCloskey. I modeled all the words on the device, showing her while she sat in the water, and then I began reading. I did this for weeks, and I did not know if it was working. Some days we'd read just a page or two, and some days we got through the very long book. And then I started modeling certain words in the text. Mrs. Mallard didn't like making a nest near foxes or turtles. So then I offered Amber the speech device for her to say the words. Yes, she was in the tub with wet fingers, saying animals, but I was careful and we never dropped the vantage light in the water. What happened was she was hooked. I read Make Way for Ducklings for months before trying other books, and then something awesome happened. This took a lot of practice, but eventually I learned to become better at reading aloud. When I started with baby Jordan, my story reading was flat and likely monotone. But by this time with Amber, I was reading with character voices. Do you remember your elementary school librarian? When our librarian read stories to us, they seemed to come alive. I wanted every book that Mrs. Tossie read during library class, but I was unable to make it come alive when I brought the book home to read to myself. However, with practice, I was reading aloud more like Mrs. Tossie. The second book I read aloud to Amber during bath time was Library Lion by Michelle Knudsen. If you're not familiar with the story, a lion is permitted to be in the library only if he can follow the library rules. One librarian doesn't like the lion's presence in the library and wishes the obedient lion would be banned. Well, when the lion does break the rules, the librarian goes to tattle on him to the head librarian. Each time I read that line in the book, I read it in a tattletale sounding refrain. The lion broke the rules, the lion broke the rules. Now, here's where being totally sleep deprived has benefited me, because this was not intentional. While reading this book, I paused once before delivering the line. I was most likely yawning, but that was when Amber read the line aloud for me. Actually, she sang it back to me in a sing-songy, tattletale voice, just as I was reading to her for weeks prior. The lion broke the rules, the lion broke the rules. It wasn't crisp articulation, but it was clearly what she was saying, and I was elated that she had read a book back to me. I tried it again with book number 3, The Giant Jam Sandwich by John Verne Lord.
They stung Lord Swell on his fat, bald plate. Bzzz. Ouch! And they dived, and they hummed, and they buzzed, and they ate. And the noisy nuisance grew and grew till the villagers cried, what can we do? That's right, honey. So they called a meeting in the village hall, and Mayor Muddlenut asked them all, what can we do? And they said, good question, but no one had a good suggestion.
Okay, so now I had Amber's attention for storyline. Now she needed more books. We also paired reading with other difficult things. During this time, Amber had difficulty sitting for any length of time for toileting. She would get up within seconds, so we read to her. The bathroom is where we began reading storylines, and it's still the easiest place to get our reading in. Starting to get to know the way your child's vocabulary is organized. Give everyone the opportunity to learn the device. Whether you have a designated device or an iPad, make it accessible to everyone, especially when their interest is piqued. The more practice with this device, the better. And take it with you everywhere you take your phone. So that means everywhere. We officially started with Lamp Words for Life when Amber turned 5. Before then, we used the Vantage Light, and it had a floating activities row and multiple program changes, and just a whole lot of reorganization of words by Mom. Switching to Lamp Words for Life meant keeping the same motor plan. This change in her word locations did not throw Amber off for long. She no longer made wild mad libs with her device. Instead, she started learning the speech device with the use of an app called Endless Reader. Other than words and book titles, this game really taught me the words and locations in LAMP. It showed me just how well, it also showed me just how well Amber knew her device. Here's how you play. First, you let your child pick a word and creatively match the letters of the word. If you're not familiar with this app, each letter makes its letter sound when you pick it up and match it to the letters in the word. Second, after all the letters are matched, stars fall celebrating the match is complete, and the word turns into the objects it's spelled. This is when I would cover the toy iPad screen and ask Amber to find the word on her speech device. If she hesitated for several seconds, I would go to the word find button and we would learn the word's location on the device together. After she said the word on the speech device, we'd continue with the game. Next, the app has you match the word within a sentence, and then it does a video model of the sentence. The monsters acted out.
W-A-A. Say away.
Away. Away.
Good job.
Away. Away.
Away. Into. Up. Up. Wow. That's high. The kite flew up and away into the sky.
Thanks.
The kite flew up and away into the sky.
Kite.
That's right, kite. And
Amber loved words and letters, and anytime we played, she taught me the location of her words. The next way we learned words on LAMP was to read a book. Read a book with it. In kindergarten, Amber began reading books with her speech device. The first books any child reads as simple sentences and repeating words. These books began coming home in her backpack, and she would read them with her speech device as homework at home. These were not the type of books I was reading aloud to her. I was reading Amber beautiful, living picture books. Words in picture books are crafted to clearly convey a message, but they are not simple words to decode. Please understand just how unpleasant language acquisition would be if you only spoke to a person with a limited vocabulary used in these books. However, the best thing about these books is they have common and easy decodable words. The majority of the words are found in the LAMP vocabulary, as well as some words the child will need to spell, like a name of a person. When Amber began reading with her speech device, that is when she began reading the words aloud. She would first say the word with LAMP and then with her voice. I hope the audio comes through on this one, but don't be distracted by Jordan, who's talking in the background.
With. Are we having a garage sale or something?
Pre-spring cleaning.
Go. Let's go. B. U. Pre-spring cleaning. Sounds cool. F. T. E. R. Let's go faster. Good. Dog. Exclamation mark. Good dog.
Awesome. I like that reading.
Reading these same books with a speech device is also what greatly improved my skills with LAMP. Amber knows her speech device well, but if I did not commit to learning the location of the words, I would never be able to model for her. Reading these first reader books was a quick and simple way for me to practice the device. I bought a set of 20 books and I tried to read one a day with her talker. Once you practice using LAMP, you'll begin to see the pattern. You must see the pictures on the core page as landmarks instead of literal interpretations. After the first button selection, you can see how the verb row in the center and the second and third button is generally the word that you're looking for. We had been using the speech device for years, and the background colors for buttons are just beginning to stand out for me. Now the green verbs and the orange category names pop out. Over the years, I've also made it a point to go to LampWorks for live trainings. I need to be refreshed on how it's organized and how it should be used, even though we have lots of practice because we are living with this device. Strategies for using the device in any environment. Amber has access to her speech device at all times, and she has learned to take it with her everywhere. Do you know that feeling that you get when you've misplaced your phone? You've left it in the car or in another room, or you just realized you've been without it? This is the same feeling that we have when Amber doesn't have her speech device. We feel disconnected, like we've missed some communication and we need to catch up. The best way to get this feeling is to ask your child questions everywhere and to pay attention to what's happening around you. You have to model for them how to respond to your questions at first because they're learning. But it's so much fun when they get to the point of independently communicating something that you did not teach or sharing with you something that someone else taught them. As Amber's mom, I spend the most time with her. And I know more of the context of her communication than anyone. Often, Amber communicates interesting messages that need a bit of decoding. Amber is a unique auditory learner. So she likes to play with words like square plus L equals squirrel, or chalk plus let equals chocolate. Amber created these two unique phrases before we knew she was reading. But by listening to the words blended together, we could understand what she was trying to say. It's wonderful to be a part of my child's unique way of communicating. It's like our own inside joke. She does this with words, but now, she still does this with words, but now I model the correct spelling so that everyone can clearly understand her. For example, farm plus A plus C is pharmacy. Amber began working on spelling in kindergarten, and it's a skill that she's still working on today. Another thing that we try to do is to have Amber label the locations that we frequently go to. I want to encourage you to be very specific when you name these locations. Amber enjoys going to playgrounds and parks. This is actually why Amber started to say pharmacy, because we would go there a lot. But there are a lot of playgrounds that Amber can go to. So you really should try to label them uniquely. And the important thing about this, though, is to label the location before you get out of the car. Amber is now able to read, and she can dictate the spelling of words from signs. So we started having her spell by showing her or telling her how to spell. This all began when she wanted this movie really, really bad. Take a look at this. Wonderful World, Wizard of Ha-Ha-Ha's. Wizard is not in the speech device. Wizard was one of the first words Amber could spell independently because it was part of the title of the movie that she really wanted to watch.
Please. Ha ha ha. Pause. Ha ha ha.
Can you do the whole thing? You start with the wonderful.
Wonderful.
You see it there?
W. I. Z. A. R. D. Wonderful wizard. Wizard. Of. Ha ha ha. Pause. Wonderful wizard of ha ha ha's. Ha ha ha.
Again, I want you to believe in your child. I did not know, but I had a hunch that Amber was able to sound out words in her head. We worked on spelling with flashcards, the same way I learned how to spell. First, by copying the word, then by getting a brief peek, and then by having someone read the word aloud to me. In the video you're about to see, Amber had a picture of someone slipping to refer to, but we found that that was not necessary for her to spell the word, and we verbally sounded out for her as much as she needed.
What do you think? What comes first? Slip.
You want more chocolate?
You do it.
S. L.
Hip.
I. P.
You
Slip.
got it.
Another environment that we use the device outside of our house is our car. Amber loves music, and for many years, she had total control of my car tunes, simply because she made song requests. If your child is in the car, their speech device should be with them. Model the title of a song and play it for them. You may have to repeat the song a few times for them to get a hang of it, but then introduce a new song title to them. This does take some preparation, and when I began this, I would tape a list of song titles to my dash. I did this with just a few CDs. Now we have a newer car, and I've created an Amber playlist. But at one point, when Amber was little, she preferred a Korean song that neither of us knew how to pronounce. She called it Song Number 7, and we went with it. A few years ago, I decided I would only listen to music that both of us enjoyed. So now she requests songs like Imagine Dragons' Believer Song, or more recently, Summer Breeze song. I don't have any videos of Amber requesting music from the car, but here's a video of Amber making a song request.
You? Oh, there she is. Elsa!
Glad. Glad.
Me again. May I present Prince Hans of the
Open.
Your blessing.
Door. Let's open door.
Okay, honey.
Restaurants are another great place for speech device. Just like your mealtime at home, food words are pretty easy to model. However, there's a lot more going on in a restaurant, and you generally have a lot more time to wait for your meal to come. Amber once said hamster to me in a restaurant while we were waiting at a table, and the rest of the family was retrieving the food. So I busted out my best rendition of a counting song that I was certain was produced by hamster voices. Amber then used her speech device to tell me embarrassment. Another way we practice our speech device outside of the house is by taking notes during a time when we should be listening. Because Amber might be fidgeting or making a vocalization when an adult is talking in a group setting, I take notes for her and I have her review them, have her review what I've written. For example, if we're at story time at the library or at our Wednesday night kids program at church, I would bring something to write on and I would write down key words. This keeps my kid focused on the story. I found that it's not only a great benefit to Amber, but also to all the other kids around her, especially if we're sitting on the carpet. They can see the single words and phrases I've written down, and it brings their focus back to the speaker too. Then I'd have Amber repeat the word or phrase on her speech device, and the community around us knows that Amber is engaged as well. Amber is a fairly active member of our community. I believe inclusion begins with me. I choose to include Amber in activities our family enjoys because she's a part of our family. Inclusion is not a special program. Inclusion is a philosophy and a process which promotes unconditional acceptance. Inclusion is being accepted the way you are because you are a part of that community. We want to really live. When Amber was diagnosed with autism, I was blown away with the thought that while I was growing up, I had never really seen or known a child with a developmental disability. I had only seen adults. In elementary school, I had no interaction with children with special needs. They were completely segregated. I choose to live differently. I want Amber to have the same opportunities as any child, and her inclusion is supported by laws such as the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975. When we go out into the community, we are noticeably different. I've decided that I do not want to try to see my child through others' staring eyes. I want others to see my child through my eyes. She is beautifully and wonderfully made. When we go into the community, I want everyone else to see how much I love Amber and to see how I respond to her. I am modeling the interactions I want them to have with her. I believe in Amber's abilities, and I am not alone. I receive help from many people who support our family, people who see Amber as I do. I choose to have Amber participate in community offerings that are available to everyone. For the last year, Amber has participated in summer camps and gymnastics classes through the City of Columbus Recreations and Parks Department that are also available to any child of her age. Amber is able to participate in the same programs as her typically developing peers with inclusion support. Amber began speaking words when we were reading with, when she was in kindergarten, but it's not an easy task. When she said the lion broke the rules and what can we do, It was difficult for her to make those sounds, despite that she had heard and seen those words many times. Amber has not had a language explosion, and I do not consider her hyperlexic. We have just spent a lot of time reading to her. Here's a video of Amber reading with her speech device.
Hippopotamus.
When we read to Amber, we don't ask her to read the entire text. Often, I have her read the title or author and illustrator, and we take some time to look at the pictures. I also, when reading a sentence with her, I read the beginning and she reads the end. The amount I have her read depends on her tolerance. Poetry and rhyming text are fantastic for this. Poetry exposes Amber to new words and concepts that she would not normally hear, and the rhythm of rhyming words makes it easier for her to say. In the beginning, I would accept any vocalization that Amber would say for a word that I requested her to say. But with practice, she can now say nearly anything. Now, if it's not clear, I'll ask her to say the word again. I will then verbally model the word if she needs it. And often I'll break it down into syllables for her by touching my chin or hers. Amber also lets me know that she's tired of reading with her own voice, and she touches my chin as if she is touching the play button for me to read the words aloud. Amber's articulation is not always clear, and her reading voice is very quiet. Also, unfortunately, at about the first grade, she started avoiding our camera. Start to play.
Jackpot.
Watch it grow. Pass it
Ba-
down.
ba.
One earth spins around. One seed. She so knows.
I know.
Two hands dig a hole. Start to play. Amber's journey is not over. She communicates many things to us, but she is not yet a completely open communicator. However, I will do my best to help her learn and to help her communicate. I highly recommend that you read the Read Aloud Handbook by Jim Trelease. Sadly, it's an old book. It was first published in 1982, and it has had 7 revisions. You may find some book in its treasury out of print. However, I also recommend you read The Read Aloud Family by Sarah Mackenzie. Her book lists practical ways to make reading a part of your life, as well as current books that you'll fall in love with. She also has a podcast, Read Aloud on Revival, that I truly enjoy listening to, and her website has wonderful book lists for any age or type of reader. When we began this journey of reading aloud, we didn't know how rewarding it would be. Reading to and with Amber has enriched both of our lives. It has created a strong bond between us. With practice, we both got better at it. Give yourself grace and time and see where you can go. I want to thank the Center for AAC and Autism for inviting me to share this story, and I would like to thank you each for the time that you have spent to listen.
Thank you so much, Laurie. I just want to thank you. I can't thank you enough for sharing that story with us and for sharing with everybody on here tonight about your journey at learning along with Amber, and I'm excited to hear where that journey continues to take both of you. I want to also just thank everybody that attended tonight's webinar. If you have any additional questions following tonight, please feel free to email myself as well as our guest presenter. If we did not get to answer your questions tonight, I know we had a lot of questions that came through. We will be sure to follow up with you after the conclusion of our webinar series. Either myself or Cindy or Laurie will reach out to you and make sure that we follow up with those questions that you may have. You will receive a follow-up email at the conclusion of our webinar series. It will have a link to the recording as well, so you can go back and view that recording if you missed any piece of it, or if you were having any technical difficulties or just want to go back and listen to it again, feel free to do that. At the end of the webinar tonight, when I close out, you will see a feedback survey pop up. If you're able to take a couple minutes and fill out that feedback survey, we would really appreciate your input. That will also come through in a follow-up email later this week if you don't have time to complete it tonight. I just want to remind those of you that are needing your ASHA CEUs, make sure you fill out the ASHA form. You only need to fill it out once for all 3 nights or however many nights you attended. And if you can, just make note for us again regarding what nights you attended so that we have record of that. And make sure to get those forms in within 10 days as well. And with that, I just want to thank everyone again for coming tonight. I want to thank Laurie for spending her evening with us and sharing her story and Amber's story with us. And I hope everyone has a great evening. Hopefully we will see many of you back tomorrow.